In the mid-24th century, the Romulan Kerchan Class Warbird was the most feared ship in the Alpha Quadrant. Twice the size of the Federation's Galaxy class, and with its menacing silhouette, it commanded fear wherever it was seen. However, during the Dominion War, its aura of fear and power would be dispelled. In response, the Romulan Imperial Navy sought a replacement. This ship would not only project fear and power as its predecessor, but also serve as a true apex predator of the Alpha Quadrant. During the mid-24th century, the Kerchan Class Warbird was ubiquitous throughout the Romulan Imperial Navy. As with many ships of the period, she was designed to be a multi-role vessel, its mission profile encompassing that of an explorer, long-range cruiser, troop carrier, and a battleship. This allowed the Kerchan to provide a flexible response package in a relative era of peace. Indeed, much of her design was a response to her contemporaries in the Federation and Klingon Empire, whose fleets were largely composed of multi-role medium cruisers and frigates, such as the Klingon Cavort and Federation New Orleans class. In theory, during combat, the Kerchan would be capable of engaging an entire squadron with its 360-degree arc of fire and cloaking device. The Kerchan could dominate a significant portion of the combat zone. Most ships of the period, particularly those of the Klingon Defense Force, had only narrow arcs of fire, meaning they could only attack in brief volleys before repositioning. All the while, the Kerchan could maintain a consistent barrage of fire even against targets to her aft. When applied on a larger level, this could be devastating, with each ship in the formation not only holding her own area of space, but also providing supporting fire to her sister ships. The effect of this was that a small number of warbirds would be able to engage whole squadrons of smaller enemy frigates through continuous and overwhelming firepower. However, on the very day she revealed herself to the Federation, also marked the start of her decline. In many ways, the Galaxy class went against the assumptions that had been made when designing the Kerchan. Not only was it significantly larger than anticipated, it also possessed a level of technological sophistication at least a decade ahead of the Kerchan. Not only was the Galaxy class significantly faster than the Kerchan, she was also far more adaptable in combat, capable of engaging smaller, more maneuverable ships, as well as ships larger than herself. Additionally, the Galaxy class was found to be more capable as a multi-mission platform. Despite this, it was still well recognized by both Romulan and Starfleet officers that the Kerchan was the superior combat vessel, and would likely win in an engagement between the two. Yet even in this regard, the Kerchan would not go unchallenged. Early in 2372, the Klingon Defense Force unveiled their latest battleship, the Negvar class. Similar in size to the Galaxy class, she was a purebred battleship, equipped with a variety of weapons, including fixed disruptors, beam disruptor turrets, multiple torpedo launchers, and 2 underslung heavy disruptor cannons, a formidable arsenal. While not as ubiquitous as the Kerchan, the Negvar in a one-on-one encounter could certainly compare with the firepower of the Kerchan. However, ultimately, the shortcomings of the Kerchan as a warship will be revealed in her engagements with the Dominion. Against the small maneuverable Jem'Hadar fighters, the Diduridex lacked sufficient targeting sensors to accurately pick off the nimble fighters, allowing them to get close and inflict critical damage with impunity. Against the larger Dominion cruisers, the Diduridex fared better, but such engagements were rare, as the cruisers were able to outmaneuver the Diduridex and avoid unfavourable engagements. The same cannot be said of the Cardassian Galors, which were easy prey for the Diduridex, very much falling into the category of ships which the Diduridex had been designed to destroy. Ultimately, however, the final nail in the coffin for the Diduridex was the Jem'Hadar battleship. Larger still than the Diduridex, and possessing a vast armament, including a very large complement of torpedoes, she was a true dreadnought, and proved to be practically insurmountable against all but the most well-coordinated attacks. Even then, few are recorded as having been destroyed in the duration of the Dominion War. With the failures of the Dominion War fresh in their minds, and the Federation looking to leave them in the dust with their newer ships such as the Sovereign class, Romulan High Command issued a desperate requirement for a replacement for the now obsolete Diduridex. Very early on, it was established that to adequately take on the many and varied duties of the Diduridex, the Imperial Navy would require 2 classes rather than 1. One would serve as a multi-role workhorse, whilst the other would serve as a purebred battleship. The contract for the multi-role cruiser was awarded to Kerchen Engineering, whilst the contract for the battleship was awarded to Talari Starworks, who originally designed the Diduridex. Despite the 2 projects being under separate companies and for different requirements, the development of both ships was characterized by the long-standing rivalry between Kerchen and Talari, and in many ways their final products would respectively exemplify this. The leader for the new battleship project at Talari was Avak Mai, nephew of Jalay Mai, who had in fact designed the original Diduridex. For Avak, it was not only his career at stake, but his family legacy as well. When first beginning the project, Avak looked back at his aunt's initial design studies, taking an interest in a vertical engine configuration. However, this was abandoned as being too weak and unnecessary with modern warp engines. He also looked into the possibility of a monolithic flying wing configuration. However, it was soon agreed that this would likely result in a lower power efficiency, similar to the Federation's Altair prototype. Ultimately, Avak and his design team returned to the original Diduridex design, and set about performing a thorough and honest evaluation of its failings. This process may have been hastened if his team had been given access to black boxes recovered from destroyed warbirds. However, as a precaution against espionage, no such recordings ever existed. Further complicating the issue was disentangling her failures as a multi-role vessel from her failures as a battleship. Initially, this meant that all tactical analysis was obtained using simulations rather than any real telemetry. This led to a great deal of confusion in regard to the development of tactical systems for the new vessel. However, proposals for the space frame were very quickly developed, the essential quality being that it resembled a somewhat pared-down Diduridex. Indeed, the type of space frame employed in the 2 ships proved to be a major difference in the rival designs, Kerchen opting for a more traditional broad-wing design, whilst Avak's design team instead took inspiration from the more elongated space frame utilized in the Federation's new Sovereign class. One of the main failings of the Diduridex proved to be her disappointing engine performance, being substantially less than that of the Federation's Galaxy class. This had partially been due to the relatively primitive nature of the singularity reactors that had come into use on Romulan vessels. Fortunately, since that time, Romulan engine technology had advanced significantly. When selecting the engines to be fitted to the new Warbird, AVAC's priority was reliability. In the past, many Diduridexes had burned out their engine coils trying to keep pace with Federation rivals. As a result, AVAC chose to forego the newest Ranix Series 5 engines in favour of the slower but more reliable Series 4. The armaments of the new vessel were heavily inspired by the newest ships produced by the Federation and Klingon Empire. Two proposals were ultimately issued. One of them argued in favour of an armament similar to the Klingon Negvar, with emphasis on the employment of heavy disruptors, whilst the other pushed for an Akira-inspired design with a large torpedo complement. Ultimately, a compromise was reached. The ship would be armed with heavy disruptors and multiple torpedo tubes, posing a formidable threat to any starship. In 2376, however, Talari began to encounter obstacles to the development of a prototype. In the previous year, Keskachar had already filed a request to build their own prototype, which had been approved by the Imperial Command. However, they were reluctant to award funding to Talari's project to develop their own prototype, as it would be significantly more expensive. The sentiment in the Romulan Imperial Senate was that such a vessel was unnecessary. The Dominion War having ended just 2 years ago, the development of a pure battleship was no longer viewed as a priority. Instead, they favoured the development of the cheaper multi-role cruiser. This caused delay in the battleship's development, and it would not be until 2379, nearly 3 years later, that Talari was awarded funding to develop a prototype. However, in that time, significant developments in the ship's design occurred. This was largely spurred by data handed over by the Federation of the Battle of the Omarion Nebula, which until then had been a mystery. The data of the battle inspired two critical design choices. Firstly, it led AVAC to revise the mounting of the Warbird's engines, which up to that point had been mounted on the wingtips, as was traditional of most Romulan designs. However, the data showed that during the battle, many Warbirds had been unable to flee due to engine damage. As a result, AVAC's team devised a more unconventional mounting, which better served to protect her engines from attack. The second came from the revelation that the targeting systems on the Diduridex became inaccurate when tracking numerous fast-moving targets. To counter this issue, the targeting systems were improved with the use of passive and active tracking, as well as predictive targeting on engaged vessels, and an option for both fire and forget and active torpedo guidance. This would enable the battleship to competently engage targets of all sizes. For AVAC and his team at Talari, the feeling was that the project was sliding into stagnancy, with many in the Senate and High Command growing more skeptical of the project. However, in 2379, a military coup caused a seismic shift in the political landscape, and Talari's project quickly fell into favour within the new military government, and the first prototype was ready by early 2380. In early 2380, the battleship prototype made its maiden voyage, The name chosen was the Imperial Romulan Warbird Kerchan. The name Kerchan belonged to a mythological bird, its name translating as the Shadow of Death, and it is often depicted in Romulan art as a skeletal bird, the new ship emulating the skeletal appearance. When revealed to High Command, it did not disappoint. Many of the project's most vocal critics fell silent. The Kerchan not only met, but also exceeded the expectations of many. While incremental increases in speed, both sublight and warp, had been made, the Kerchan completely shattered expectations regarding maneuverability and firepower. More than twice as maneuverable as her predecessor, the Kerchan exhibited a level of maneuverability hitherto unseen on a battleship. This was a result of her more compact configuration, as well as a more robust hull construction, allowing the Kerchan to engage in high-G maneuvers. However, it was her firepower which was truly terrifying. The Kerchan armament consisted of 4 heavy pulse disruptor cannons, as well as 16 torpedo tubes, with a vast complement of 1,600 torpedoes, outgunning the Federation Sovereign class and matching the Klingon Negvar battleship. With High Command being largely satisfied with the prototype, only minor adjustments were necessitated. These included the shortening of the nacelle pylons to improve warp speeds, the revision of 16 single-fire torpedo launchers to 6, each capable of firing up to 10 torpedoes simultaneously. As well as this, 6 short-range disruptor arrays were added to engage smaller targets. The modifications to the Kerchan prototype were completed in 2380, and the Warbird was fully commissioned in early 2381. Followed closely by the first 2 production models, the Adis and the Naral, in 2382. The Kerchan class has a length of 937 meters, a width of 478 meters, and a draft of 233 meters. It is spanned by a total of 68 decks, accommodating a crew of 1,100. It can comfortably cruise at warp 8.5 and can cruise at warp 9. It has a maximum speed of warp 9.975. It boasts an armament of 4 heavy pulse disruptors with a yield of 92,000 terawatts and 6 low-range disruptors for close defense. 6 torpedo tubes with a complement of 1,600 torpedoes. Its shields have a total output of 3,945,000 terajoules, twice that of her predecessor. Its hull is composed of a durable duranium tritanium weave. It is a formidable warship. A sleek update of the Diduridex, the Kerchan class is vastly more powerful than its antiquated predecessor. Unlike the Nerexan, very little of the Kerchan systems are devoted to science. In order to accommodate the vastly improved tactical systems, both speed and science were sacrificed. In the following decades, the menacing space frame of the Kerchan class would become a haunting symbol of Romulan power and influence, becoming one of the Star Empire's greatest assets in its continued Cold War with the Federation. In the years following the Riemann Revolt, the Kerchan proved instrumental in suppressing slave uprisings, its heavy torpedo complement being optimal for use in orbital bombardments. These brutal actions served to cement the image of the Kerchan as one of fear. She appeared to the Federation in 2385 in a confrontation with the USS Titan. As a battleship, the Kerchan sent a clear message to the Federation of a renewed strength in the Romulan Empire and a return to a policy of confrontation. Since then, the Kerchan has become synonymous with confrontation, its presence indicating that the Empire considers the matter to be serious. It is generally believed by crews both Federation and Romulan that the Kerchan is significantly more powerful than even the mighty Federation Sovereign class. This, combined with its imposing design, allows the Kerchan to be employed as a weapon of intimidation as much as a weapon of war. As of today, it is believed that there are at least 55 Kerchan class ships in service, providing the Imperial Navy with a cutting-edge battleship to augment her illustrious fleet. The class remains in production and is believed to last well into the 25th century, projecting power and fear wherever it goes. Avac Mai was successful in creating a worthy successor to his aunt's iconic design. The Kerchan is a true apex predator of the Alpha Quadrant.